Instead of chasing all the Americans out of the embassy, the Iranians imprisoned them somewhere on these grounds.
They blindfolded us, tied our hands behind our backs.
They have been hostages ever since.
Some 60 Americans, bound and blindfolded, are now beginning their 6th day of captivity inside the U.S. Embassy in Tehran.
Shortly after the embassy in Tehran had been overrun by so-called students, and a number of, at that point, 60-some Americans were being held hostage, we quickly recognized the need to have some Farsi-speaking people or some, if possible, Iranian Americans who might be somewhere in DOD who could support us in preparing for and conducting the mission to rescue those hostages. One of the ones we interviewed was a young airman named Fred Aruji. Pretty quickly, we recognized that he was something special.
Went through all kinds of training. Months later, General Bott called me in his office one day. He says, "Are you ready to travel?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, son, can you go get your tickets to Tehran?"
It was decided that we needed to send in an advance party to do last-minute reconnaissance. And Fred, as a native Iranian, had the tongue, had the eyes, had the ears, had the sense of things happening in Iran. We asked him if he would be part of the advance party.
I was met by Bucky Burris, Captain Burris, and Colonel Beckwood walks in the room. Big guy, he's huge, and he's got a real raspy voice. Beckwood looked at me, he goes, "That beard looks good. Don't shave that beard. And I want you to keep that look." Well, Colonel Beckwood turned around to walk away, and he stopped. He looked at me again. He goes, "I'll tell you what, son." I said, "While you're here, you keep your mouth shut. Do you understand?" I said, "Yes, I do." He looked at me again. He goes, "No, you don't understand." He said, "This is my country. I love my country, and I'm not going to let any son of a bitch destroy it. So you keep your damn mouth shut while you're here. And if I ever find out that you're talking too much or saying things, I'll put you in a jail, or you'll never see the sun again," or something to that effect. Well, for the first time in my life, I stepped 2-3 feet forward towards Colonel Beckwood. And I looked at him straight in the eye, and I told him, I said, "Sir, do you know the difference between you and me?" "Hey, what is it, God damn it?" That's how he talked to me. I said, "The difference is you were lucky. You were born in this country as American." I said, "I earned mine, and I love it just as much as you do." He looked at me. He was kind of stunned when I said that. He looked at me, and he goes, "We'll see, God damn it." And he walked away. And I'll tell you, I thought I was going to faint. Bucky turns around and tells me, "Hey, Freddie, he really likes you."
You know, Fred walking in the door as a new guy, standing up to the commander, says a lot right there. And I think that Beckwith realized that later, and realized what kind of a gem that he actually had inherited. And I think took a few minutes, and later on in the chow hall, Beckwith came in and gave Fred a big old hug and said, "You know what, you are a true American." And that's the thing that when you talk about loyalty to the nation, Fred is it.
The mission was supposed to occur on the night of April 24th, 25th, 1980. And that particular day, the 24th of April, Dick Meadows and Fred went by the warehouse where the vehicles were stored. And what Fred detected was a ditch dug across the driveway that was significantly deep, and there was no way that those vehicles were going to be driven out and over that ditch.
I said, "Man, what are we going to do?" And about 10, 15 feet away from us, there's probably 12, 13, 14 kids, teenagers, younger kids, playing soccer. So I told Dick, I said, "Hey, Dick, why don't you go grab the whole basket of orange and pass it to these kids?" So he goes inside, he gets all the oranges and apples, and I said, "Hey, guys, can you help me? They said, what do you need? I said, can you guys help me move some of this concrete chunks and put it back in this hole? And that's how we got the hole filled.
And if it weren't for that fact, then we would have never been able to drive those vehicles and conduct the mission on night 2.
2 of our American aircraft collided on the ground in a remote desert location in Iran.
After it was detected that, in fact, an attempt was made and a failure had occurred at Desert 1, the media splashed that there, in fact, were Americans of Iranian descent involved in a mission. And accordingly, that put Fred under great danger.
But we have no idea what just took place. So we get back to the hotel, I drop Dick off, and I get back to mine, and I just turn the TV on. And next thing I know, I'm looking, they were carrying the bodies of the 8 individuals that got burned. And all I see is a crash site, smoking, and this and that. So I'm in deep trouble at this point. I called Dick, I told him I'll pick you up and I'll take you to the airport. So I did. And we had a Mercedes, somebody had bought it for us. Dick told me, take the Mercedes and head to Turkish border and we'll contact you there. Well, make a long story short, the keys to the Mercedes, there was other gentleman, he had the keys in his pocket and he was already on the flight home. So I wasn't about to go break into the brand new Mercedes in not too far from the committee and headquarters and get busted for that. So, but I told Dick, I said, I'll find a way. So the only way in and out of Iran at that time was through Tehran.
We had no contact with him after the mission was aborted. I frankly thought that I would never see Fred Aruggi alive again.
One of the first things we did after we got back and found out he hadn't gotten out, Colonel Beckwith had me draft a message to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs saying that we would use all the resources at our disposal to get this brave young American out of Tehran. In the end, Fred did it all himself.
When Fred got back, he was still an airman in the United States Air Force. When he got back to the United States, President Carter wanted to meet him, and they gave him an award. And at that meeting, President Carter said, young man, I believe I just met one of the most bravest men in uniform.
And at that time, I was presented with my award, the Defense Superior Service Medal. And President Carter asked me what are some of my wishes, and I said, I'd love to be a military pilot.
And so General Vaught started working the issue, and that's why out of the United States Air Force, we got one of the Army's best helicopter warrant officers and pilots.
Fred was switched from the Air Force to the Army and went to flight school. It was probably one of the best things the Air Force ever did for us.
It was more than what I had dreamed of. It was an honor and a pleasure, and at the same time challenging for me to accomplish everything. It didn't come easy. Definitely had a lot of mentors being around these guys, Ned Hubbard for one.
You know, Fred is the only person in the world that has ever gone from flight school to a special mission unit, stayed 24 years, served with distinction. Well, he's a legend that shoes that'll never be filled again. You know, 24 years in a special mission unit, perfect safety record, never aborted a mission. It's to be admired.
Fred went to rotary wing school, became an instructor pilot, went to fixed wing school, became an instructor pilot, and just was a natural at flying whatever kind of aircraft he wished to.
In the middle 90s, quite a large requirement was given to him and some pilots in his unit to develop NVG documents to teach the Army on how to better fly with that. He helped develop tactics, techniques, and procedures of this that benefited the entire Army, and I think as part of many things in his legacy, that is one that I think he should be very proud of.
Yeah, if you think about the 1980s and the type of night vision devices we had back then, you were pretty much going from 20/20 vision to about 2200. You're flying at night, low level, and basically you had a very small field of view. You constantly had to be moving. It was very demanding flying. And Fred Arugi had just gotten out of flight school.
Flying with NVGs, especially for a new pilot, is almost task overloading because you have a 40-degree field of view. You have to constantly move your head to see what's happening in the world. You get blinded by a lot of things, and the difficulty was incredible. And Fred took to it like a duck to water.
He did some amazing things for the first time with smaller aircraft, things for which the task force and special mission units have become renowned. Fred Arugi was there from the beginning on a number of those activities.
Fred Arugi is out there, one of the pioneers working approaches to buildings at night, flying low-level missions for hours at a time under these conditions.
We only flew at night, never flew 1 hour of daytime. For a year, we had a perfect safety record, and we would fly. Usually you want to be around 50 feet. You don't want to get too high because you'll lose the water. You don't want to get too low because you'll hit the water. And the thing is, at 100 knots or nautical miles per hour, it's about 2 seconds of not paying attention and you'll hit the water.
The margin of error back then was very, very slim. But those young pilots, and Fred was one of them, really brought the level up. The regular Army aviation in particular, and the use of night vision goggles that you see now in Iraq and Afghanistan. They literally can fly at night as easy as they used to do in the daytime. And that wouldn't have been possible had it not been for those guys like Fred during those times. During the height of the Iraq War, there was a unit that was getting overrun. They couldn't get anybody in to pick them up. There was no real good landing zone out there in the desert, but there was a small dirt road. Fred heard the call, turned around and said, "I'll take the mission," and actually landed this rather large fixed-wing aircraft on the road, picked these guys up and got them out of there, all under night vision systems.
For Fred to land in the middle of the night on a road to pick those guys up shows his character. You can rest assured that if the situation goes down, Fred will sacrifice everything to ensure that people come home.
Flying helicopters constantly 50 feet over water or treetops in all conditions, and the gunnery portion of it, being able to communicate, shoot, and move, all this stuff, it was challenging, but we demanded a lot from ourselves.
I know what a wonderful pilot that Fred became, and that always he was one of the most humble people and the guy that you could always depend upon to be in the right place at the right time and to never give up.
Fred is the type individual, requires no recognition. You wouldn't even know who he is in a crowd, and yet he is the guy behind the scenes that is pulling the strings, doing the deeds.
He's what you call a quiet warrior. You could spend 2 or 3 days talking to Fred Arugi, and he wouldn't tell you any of the stories that all of us will tell about him, because he just sees it as his mission. He sees it as his calling, and he sees it as his duty.
The ultimate quiet professional is Fred Arugi. He cares about his job, he cares about the people with whom he works, and he doesn't quit. He'll keep going until the mission is done or die trying.
Fred was involved in some mission request that no one really wanted to do, and Fred volunteered to go take care of the situation. And I found out later that Fred was packing his stuff to not come back, and that pretty much says it right there. I guess that's what amazes me the most is your 9 lives are burning up and you still do the job.
Fred's not, He's not this 6'5", 250-pound guy that, everybody looks at and thinks, boy, that's really a bad guy. But he is really, in the sense that I say it, he is a bad guy. And he can do a lot of things with a helicopter and with a fixed-wing aircraft that I've never seen anybody before do. And that, to me, epitomizes a special operator. It's not the guy that can run 26 miles in 2.5 hours. It's not the guy that can do 100 push-ups. It's the guy that has that character, courage, and competence that he melds together that makes him perform at a very, very high level.
The strongest part of your body has to be your heart. To me, special operator is a guy, if you tell me this is where you bedding down tonight is nothing but rocks, I go, I get a good night's sleep. But if you put me in a 5-star hotel, my sleep quality be the same, and I'll be grateful, and I sleep there. It put my thoughts, my heart in a different dimension to know that all the years of my military service, I served with the best. We don't look for pads in the back. We don't live for what we did 15, 20 years ago. How well can you do and accomplish today?